The Lord of the Rings. Before there was the Rings of Power, there was this guy. And before the Peter Jackson movies, there were the JRR Tolkien books from the 1950s. But did you know that Tolkien was actually inspired by this guy?
Your savior is here!
No, not Tom Hiddleston by Loki, and not Marvel Loki, but mythological Loki, the god of mischief, was the inspiration for Lord of the Rings. And while we're at it, Loki was also the inspiration for this guy, this guy, and this guy. But those are videos for other days, and Loki was not the only inspiration for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. The other half of that inspiration were this guy's parents. Yeah, Ragnar Lodbrok's parents inspired the Lord of the Rings as the lead characters of a large portion of this ancient Norse mythology epic, which also inspired a lot of other modern stories. But I don't want to disrupt the story by constantly pointing out references, so drop a comment for anything you notice that was inspired by this ancient tale known as the Völsung Saga. One day, the king of the gods, Odin, was on his way to see the wise and powerful sorcerer Hreidmar and Odin's blood brother Loki. As Loki and Odin are blood brothers in Norse mythology, Loki decided to join him on this road trip, and as they got bored on the trip, they took a break, and Loki asked Odin, "Hey, you want to play a game?" And Odin said, "Sure, blood brother, I love games." So they took a break and started playing World of Warships. And Loki said, "Did you know I got this game for free, blood bro?" And Odin said, "No way, blood bro." And Loki said, "Yes way, blood bro. And this game, World of Warship, lets you dominate your enemies at the head of a naval fleet in 12v12 warship battles on open seas with graphics so detailed you'll think you're actually getting wet. But oh no, what's that? You are wet because you couldn't help yourself after you realized that there are hundreds of authentic warships to choose from, and those sexy graphics, that smooth gameplay, plus free content added every month, 40 maps with historically accurate ports, aircraft carriers, battleships, submarines, and cruise ships. No, wait, so let me check the script. That was meant to say cruisers, battleships, submarines, and cruisers. All of this in free-to-play World of Warships, available on PC and consoles. And if you use the code BRAVO, you get 500 doubloons, 1.5 million credits, a premium account for a week, and an extra free ship after 15 battles. I mean, this finger knows where it needs to go. Am I right, fellas? Ladies? And used to click that link in the bio, type bravo, and get World of Warships for free, like Odin did, after he thanked Loki for recommending such an awesome free game. And when their break was over, the Blood Brothers got back on their horses and continued their road trip to see the sorcerer Hreidmar. So Loki rode along on his horse, and Odin rode along on a horse with 8 legs that Loki gave birth to.
What?
Yeah, you heard that right. And I recommend you watch my Odin and Loki videos for context, but yes, that happened. Loki was impregnated by a horse after one of his schemes went wrong. It's a long story, it's a typical Loki story. Odin rode on Loki's 8-legged horse son Sleipnir, while Loki got off of his horse because he was hungry. So Loki tied his horse up and snuck up on an unassuming otter that was oddly big and juicy, looking to get even fatter, hunting for fish in a river, and hungry Loki caught the fat otter, skinned it, and turned it into otter kebab. After enjoying a quick snack, the Blood Brothers then continued their journey, and Loki proudly wore the otter's comfortable fur around his neck for bonus fashion points and to help him against the cold northern winds. Eventually, Odin and Loki arrived at the sorcerer's palace and sat before Hreidmar and his 2 eldest sons, Regin and Fafnir. Odin tried to discuss the business he had with the sorcerer Hreidmar, but The sorcerer was emotional. It turns out that his son Otr had just been murdered. His sweet son Otr, a skilled sorcerer of his own who loved nothing more than to shapeshift into an otter and hunt for fish, and Hreidmar couldn't help but notice the brand new otter fur around Loki's neck, and Loki was like,
See, what had happened at first was... See, at first I was at the game, but then a sniper came. And the coach had got shot.
I know someone who should be shot.
The mighty sorcerer was inconsolable, furious, and he just about erupted at Loki, saying, well, if you give me enough gold, we can forget about the whole thing. What's one son when you have three, am I right? So a deal was struck that Loki had to pay Hreidmar so much gold that it would cover his dead son Otr's entire otter skin. And remember, they were talking a big, fat, juicy otter here. Loki knew only one man who had this much gold, the dwarf Andvari, a famous smith who had forged a magical ring that grants whoever wears it a never-ending supply of eternal gold, aka Unfortunately, the ring didn't exactly turn its wearer into Thanos. Andvari was still a dwarf, so the god Loki had no trouble finding and bullying Andvari into giving him the ring. But huge Kardashian lurking around the corner here, but Andvari had one line of defense. Using the same magic he created the ring with, he cursed the ring just before Loki took it, cursed it to bring misery, misfortune, jealousy, greed, and sorrow to whoever wears it and all those around him. And Loki was like, whatever, it's not for me anyway. So Loki packed up the ring and brought it back to the unsuspecting sorcerer, who was so happy with the endless treasure the ring supplied that he forgot all about his dead son and let Loki and Odin go in good conscience. And from then on, the sorcerer was enjoying his endless riches. So while Hreidmar was probably busy getting his disco dust on with whatever the Norse mythological version of nose candy was, one of his sons got jealous. Fafnir. Fafnir was consumed by the ring's appeal, drawn to it beyond control, and desired the ring for himself. So internal voices whispered to Fafnir that he should kill his father, kill the sorcerer Hreidmar, and take the ring for himself. And so Fafnir did kill his father and ran away, far, far away from the kingdom, hiding in a lair where none would ever find him, and should they find him, they would find nothing but misery, for Fafnir then used his own magic to transform into a mighty dragon, who forever sat on the ring and its endless treasure, protecting the lair from all those who would dare to enter, protecting it so well and for so long that eventually the ring faded into being nothing but a distant memory, a legend almost forgotten. Elsewhere in Norse mythology land, there was a seriously heroic dude named Sigmund. Sigmund loved Hjördis, but there was another dude named Lyngvi who also loved Hjördis, and so they had a good old love triangle going on, and Sigmund and Lyngvi decided that they would rather cross swords on the battlefield than in the bedroom in order to decide who gets to marry the beautiful Hjördis. And so they did that, and the battle was epic, so epic that Sigmund's sword shattered against Lyngvi's at the might of their blows, which sounds cool but also means that Sigmund lost. Shattered swords are pretty useless, and thus Lyngvi slayed Sigmund. But when Lyngvi went to claim his prize and marry Hjördis, she revealed that she was already pregnant by Sigmund, and so with his last breath, the dying Sigmund said,
"These nuts! Got him!"
And then Sigmund died, smiling, ascending to troll paradise. Understandably, Lyngvi was kind of pissed off at this whole situation and didn't want to marry Hjördis anymore, and left her all alone on the battlefield next to Sigmund's dead corpse and his shattered sword. Days later, the dying Hjördis was found by King Alf, a charming king who happened to come upon the battlefield, and as he saw Hjördis, he felt like a crying, dying, starving, pregnant woman abandoned on the battlefield is definitely ready to get hit on, and so he tried his luck with the smoothest pickup line ever. marry me or I'll leave you to die on this battlefield. And so Hjördis agreed, and King Alf took her in along with the pieces of Sigmund's shattered sword. Sometime later, Hjördis then gave birth to her son Sigurd, and because King Alf had already established how good of a man he was, he got a little emotional at the prospect of becoming a new father and told his wife,
I can't do this. I can't do it. I can't raise a kid. I can't look after him. I can't look at. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to chase after him?
So he decided to let a blacksmith raise the boy at another king's court. That blacksmith was a man by the name of Regin, and if that name sounds familiar, yep, it is the same Regin who is the son of Hreidmar, the sorcerer, former owner of the ring, killed for it by his son Fafnir, who Fafnir is Regin's brother, you remember. The only thing Sigurd had to remember his father Sigmund by were stories of his heroics and his shattered sword pieces that he inherited. But Regin also filled the boy's head with other stories. Over and over, Regin told Sigurd about the dragon Fafnir, a dragon who sits on an ever-growing treasure courtesy of a magical ring that is the most powerful artifact in existence and brings eternal riches to whoever has it. And at some point, young Sigurd came to love that story and started dreaming of becoming a great hero like his father was said to have been, a great hero who slays the mighty dragon. And so once Sigurd came of age, he asked Regin to make him a sword that can kill said dragon, and Regin agreed on the condition that Sigurd brings back the magical ring for Regin to keep, because
I'm broke, baby. I ain't got no money.
Before you laugh, I mean, this guy was living a broke, simple blacksmith life when suddenly some king dropped by and made him raise some random baby. I feel for Regin, I get it. And luckily, Sigurd agreed to the deal, and so Regin made him a sword out of the broken shards of his father's weapon that was once a legendary sword that was so legendary it had its own name, Gram. Now reforged, Gram was as sharp as ever, so sharp it could even cut through the blacksmith's anvil, and with the powerful weapon in his possession, Sigurd was now ready to go and slay the dragon. Except he decided that first he would go and avenge his father by killing Lyngvi. Of course, Regin was kind of pissed that wasn't the deal, but Sigurd only had his real father on his mind, and emotionally he told Regin,
Who cares what you think? You are not my father!
and Regin was like, I know, that's why I want you to pay me. What? But Sigurd wouldn't change his mind and went to avenge his father by killing Lyngvi, which actually, that's a whole part of this epic whole thing where he marches in with an army and is helped by Odin, but that story has nothing to do with what inspired Lord of the Rings. But you should know how Sigurd actually ended up killing Lyngvi, because it was kind of epic. Yeah, Sigurd carved a blood eagle on his back, aka Sigurd severed Lyngvi's ribs from the spine with an axe while he was still alive, and then pulled Lyngvi's lungs through the opening while he was still alive, all to make it appear like a pair of wings, like a pretty blood eagle. And Sigurd, he let Lyngvi suffer that fate until he was dead. So now that he successfully avenged his father, Sigurd was ready to slay himself a dragon. And after some searching, Sigurd found the dragon Fafnir's secret lair, and while the dragon was sleeping, Sigurd dug a ditch outside of the cave's entrance so that when the dragon slithers out of the cave, dragons in Norse mythology were more like giant worms, no wings, so let's switch up the artwork from here on out. When the dragon slithered out of its cave, Sigurd could hide in the ditch and stab the mighty beast from below. And Sigurd did exactly that. He stabbed Fafnir right in the heart, and the dragon bled out almost entirely, covering Sigurd in his dragon blood, which rendered all parts of the skin it touched invincible. And so the victorious slayer Sigurd emerged out of the blood-filled ditch like,
Yes! I have single-handedly vanquish the beast!
Then Sigurd collected the ring from the dragon's treasure, but as he came out of the cave, he suddenly ran into Regin, who had turned up out of nowhere and was drinking the dragon's blood. And Sigurd didn't know whether to be shocked, confused, or disgusted, but certainly leaned more towards being disgusted when Regin then asked him to cook the dragon's heart so that they can eat it. And Sigurd didn't even know that Fafnir was Regin's brother transformed, but we know that. So is that cannibalism if you eat your brother who transformed into a dragon? I'm not sure. Anyway, Sigurd wanted to know why Regin had been following him around in secret like some stalker golem, so he decided to cook the dragon's heart so that the foster dad and son can have a heart-to-heart over the hearty dinner. But as Sigurd was cooking up a feast, he suddenly heard voices whispering to him, telling him that Regin will kill him for the ring if he doesn't kill Regin first. So Sigurd killed Regin, who sure enough was actually just about to sneak up on him to do the same. But Sigurd struck him down first, and with Regin dead, the ring now belonged to Sigurd, which also meant that our guy was now eternally rich, and with all this gold, Sigurd felt like it was time to finally fulfill his dreams of being a sugar daddy and find himself a wife. So Sigurd went looking for one, and one day he heard a tale about the beautiful Brunhild, a former Valkyrie who fell from grace after she defied her lord Odin's orders and was punished by the king of the gods to lay in an eternal slumber behind an impenetrable wall of fire until she is rescued by a man worthy enough to take her hand. Sigurd felt pretty damn worthy right about now, so he sought out Brunhild, and protected by the dragon blood that had covered most of his skin and rendered large parts of it invincible, he got past the wall of fire with only a little trouble and approached the sleeping beauty, rescuing her from her fate to introduce her to a new one, love. Once the Valkyrie opened her eyes to see the face of her hero, she instantly fell in love with Sigurd, and the two promised to marry each other. To honor their promise, Brunhild and Sigurd traveled to the court of King Giuki, where they planned to say their vows and make their love official. The problem was that Sigurd was a famous dragon slayer now. More than that, the man was rich as hell and easy on the eyes, so the king's queen, his wife Grimhild, wanted Sigurd to marry her daughter Gudrun, and it turns out that the queen had also fully leveled up her alchemy skill tree, and so she brewed a potion that made Sigurd forget he ever wanted to marry Brunhild and instead made him fall in love with her daughter Gudrun. And so Sigurd married the princess Gudrun, and now a member of the king's family, he swore an oath to be a blood brother to the king's oldest sons, Gunnard and Högni. Meanwhile, the queen forced the powerful and immortal Valkyrie Brunhild to marry her son Gunnar, because it never hurts to have some Valkyrie blood in the family. But Brunhild only agreed to marry a man brave enough to cross the ring of fire she once laid behind, as this was the prophecy originally laid out by Odin. They can't break these rules. There has to be a man who proves his worth by crossing the fire, proving he is worthy of the Valkyrie's hand. So Gunnar bravely approached the wall of fire, but when he actually saw and felt the fire standing in front of it, Gunnar was like,
No. No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No. 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 Hell no. 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 I refuse. No.
Gunnar was not brave enough or fool enough to even try to walk through fire, so he went to his mother and blood brother for help. And Grimhild brewed another potion, this time one that would shapeshift Sigurd into Gunnar, so that the brave dragon slayer can traverse the ring wall of fire once more and prove his worth to marry Brunhild, all in the form of Gunnar. And so magically disguised, Sigurd braved the wall of fire once more, but all Brunhild saw was Gunnar walk through the fire for her sake, and so she had no choice but to agree to marry this brave man, at which point she lost her Valkyrie powers and became a mortal married woman. Of course, any marriage at the time had to be consumed first, and Sigurd wasn't about to pass up this chance at clapping some Valkyrie cheeks. He stayed in the form of Gunnar and laid with Brunhild for 3 nights, and then stole a ring from her as a trophy to remember this borderline very weird situation of kind of sexual assault that he was oddly proud of. Weird. Anyway, fast forward, and Brunhild never found out that it was Sigurd disguised as Gunnar who had rescued her and slept with her for 3 nights and also impregnated her in one of those 3 nights, a pregnancy that resulted in Aslaug, the daughter of Brunhild and Sigurd. But for all mother and daughter knew, she was the daughter of Brunhild and her husband Gunnar. Brave Gunnar who walked through the fire for her. Brave Gunnar, a man who Brunhild grew to be proud to love. So one day, her and her new sister-in-law, Gudrun, remember? Gudrun, the wife of Sigurd, were bathing and arguing over who married the nobler and braver man. Gudrun's argument basically wrote itself. Sigurd slayed the dragon, was eternally rich and walked through fire, but Brunhild would not relent that her Gunnar was just as brave, so Gudrun got pissed and revealed that Brunhild was actually fooled. It was Sigurd in magical disguise who walked through the fire in Gunnar's stead. Of course Brunhild didn't believe a word Gudrun said, but of course, for some random reason, Gudrun was carrying around Sigurd's trophy ring from those 3 nights of disguised lovemaking. Weird couple, those two. And when Brunhild saw her stolen ring, she was outraged, incensed. She had given up her Valkyrie powers for a lie? And so now, with all the fury, what little fury of a Valkyrie that remained, she confronted Sigurd, all but ready to kill him. But Sigurd was like,
I miss you. And I love you. God, I love you so much.
Grimhild's love potion had worn off. The man was in love. Sigurd did truly feel all the love he once felt for Brunhild once more. He loved her from the bottom of his heart and confessed it in all the right ways, finally leading to the happy ending he and Brunhild deserved. Brunhild didn't believe a word this fool said and slapped him before storming back to her husband Gunnar and demanding that he kills Sigurd to make up for his lies. But Gunnar, he was like,
Junk before trunk.
he has sworn an oath and couldn't kill his blood brother, but he could tell his younger actual brother, Guttorm, who never swore the oath, he could tell Guttorm to kill his blood brother Sigurd for him. So Guttorm ate some good old wolf's meat, aka Norse mythology steroids, and all juiced up, he snuck into Sigurd's bedchambers and stabbed him in the back, rolling a 20 on luck by somehow stabbing him in a vulnerable part of his back, a part that the dragon's blood hadn't entirely covered. And then Guttorm snuck off, but Sigurd had just enough life left in him to throw Gram after Guttorm, and the magical sword cut Guttorm in 2. He was dead on the spot. But Sigurd didn't survive his stab wound. Our great hero died just moments later. The misery, treachery, jealousy, and greed that the ring was cursed with had taken hold yet again. But the curse of the ring was far from done. After she heard of Sigurd's death, Brunhild couldn't live with her guilt, and she committed suicide. Then Sigurd's widow, Gudrun, married King Atli of the Huns, better known to us as Attila the Hun, and Attila, or Atli, who of course had heard of the legendary ring that her late dragon slayer husband had left Gudrun, demanded that the famous ring should be his now. But Gudrun and her remaining 2 brothers Gunnar and Högni had hid the ring and lived off of the treasure it provided, refusing to give it to the Hun King Atli. So King Atli killed Högni by cutting his heart out and threw Gunnar into a pit of snakes to die. And that's the end of the saga. That's the end of the Völsung saga and the magical ring. Basically everybody affected by the ring's curse dies. But where there is death, there is life. Where one legend ends, another begins. And there is no better way to segue into the legend that is Ragnar Lodbrok than a pit filled with snakes. So here it is. Remember Aslaug, the daughter born from Brunhild's 3 nights of lovemaking with Sigurd in disguise? That is the legendary Aslaug, the woman Ragnar Lodbrok would later marry. Brunhild and Sigurd were Ragnar Lodbrok's parents-in-law. Yeah, I know I said Ragnar's parents inspired the Lord of the Rings, but I had to make it sexy, you know? In-laws, okay? They're his in-laws. Close enough. But the even more legendary life of Ragnar Lodbrok, that's a video for another day. I just wanted to fill you in on that awesome connection. As for Brunhild and Sigurd, I guess they ultimately got somewhat of an ironic happy ending. The love that started with fire was ended by the flame. As both of their bodies were burned together on a pyre, they escaped the cursed cycle of the ring and death. A cycle that would continue on and on and on into the 20th century, where it inspired JRR Tolkien to write The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. Of course, the ancient mythological tale inspired other works too, most notable Das Nibelungenlied and Wagner's opera Der Ring des Nibelungen. Also, Beowulf is eerily similar to the tale of Sigurd, who in many other versions of his tale is also known, and in fact sometimes better known, as Siegfried. To be honest, this tale, a ring or treasure protected by a dragon, the dangers of greed and corruption that come with power, this tale has so many ancient versions that writing the script for this video was a chore with a capital chore. Like, seriously, the Völsung Saga was not the first or original version of Sigurd or Siegfried. Epics of a hero named Sigurd date back to the 11th century, to carvings on walls and rune stones, but the Völsung Saga is the most coherent-ish ancient epic that contains Sigurd's tale, and I think I managed to give you the most comprehensive, easy-to-follow version of this epic from the late 13th century. But do know that Sigurd's tale is just a portion of this saga, and that there are versions upon versions upon versions upon versions of the Völsung Saga with tons of subtle and big changes. Think of it like Game of Thrones, the series, and the books. Same core, different execution. Now, think of there being more than just 2 versions, and consider that it is ancient and that the original was never written in the most coherent manner to begin with. Then consider that each version varies over the centuries, over the various tribes scattered over various countries, various languages, various translations, various interpretations, and you end up with a story that took on many shapes and forms. The point is that JRR Tolkien took a lot of inspiration from The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit from Norse mythology, and this tale in particular. But Tolkien also borrowed heavily from other parts of Norse mythology, like Gandalf is basically Odin cosplaying. Odin, king of the gods, would regularly wander the world in search of wisdom, wearing grey robes and a staff, along with sporting a grey beard and long hair. But then there's also the ancient tale, the Kalevala, in which the character Vainamunen is a magician who rides around on the back of an eagle, and he has a long beard and long grey hair. That sounds familiar, right? And his role in that story, well, that story features a magical item called the Sampo, which gives its owner insane power, and everyone desires it, just like the One Ring. And Vainamunen is the guy deciding that the ring should be destroyed. So definite Gandalf vibes here. But Gandalf is not the only name Tolkien borrowed from Scandinavia. All the dwarves' names, Thorin, Balin, Dvalin, Bombur, and for good measure, Gandalf again, and more names, they are taken directly from the 3,000-year-old Vedic Edda, which has a chapter listing all the dwarves' names, like literally those exact names. And there's more. Influences from real history, and you could argue that real history also inspired these mythological tales, as is evident by Attila the Hun making an appearance in their story. Tolkien was also influenced by Christianity and even had some Greek influence, where you could argue that Plato inspired Tolkien. There's a lot, and I will put everything I didn't mention in this video in the description below in a long notes section, because it wouldn't fit the flow of the storytelling here. So don't forget to check that out in the description, and also don't forget to click the link in the description to play the game Loki and Odin were playing. You know,